Hey, everybody. I took a longer pause there than usual just because I took a longer pause than usual. I'm not sure exactly why. I sort of need to catch my breath a little bit because what's happening is every hour on the hour I'm having conversations, and it's beautiful. Normally, and I'm not a rookie to conversations. I've had conversations a lot, but normally they've been around business or things like that. The conversations I'm having now are the most interesting ones I've ever had in my life, because they're with people that 10 minutes before they walked into this room, I didn't know they existed. But that's not the case with the person that's in the room here today. We were supposed to have this conversation earlier before she had me on her podcast, but it didn't work out. So we had to cancel this and reschedule till afterwards. So I know her by being on her podcast, but that doesn't mean that I know her, because on her podcast, she was kind enough to be inquisitive about me. So she may know me a little bit better than I know her. I really don't know that much about her. I should say that the show is sponsored by the Mosaic, the book over my left shoulder. It's my book. And I'm so happy that the people that created my book are willing to sponsor the show, because it really is hand in hand with what I was supposed to do. When I finished writing the Mosaic, which I'll tell you about in a minute, the book literally told me get out on the road and do what the main character in the book, the protagonist in the book, Mo, did, and he went out on the street and he talked to the people nobody spoke to and listened to the people no one listened to. And I was about to set out on that journey, and then COVID came. And my journey was temporarily postponed until it comes back, which it may or may not do. Maybe this is my journey, but I hope it will come back. Because now I'm meeting people on every continent through these conversations I'm having in this room, who have been more than happy to say, if you come by, let's definitely go out to eat. You can stay with us. You can do this. You can park your van here. We'll pick you up at the train station, whatever the heck it is. But there's something beautiful in the whole process of what the Mosaic book taught me. And it was having conversations with people I wouldn't normally have conversations to. More than that, it was listening to people that I normally kept away from. It was the ordinary people. It was the people that were the homeless people, the street people, the trash man, the waitress, the juice man, the blind woman, the homeless guy. And when I sat and listened to them tell me their stories, what I realized is the person that I saw initially was not at all who they were. You know, there's that saying, you can't judge a book by its cover, but we all do. I sure do. And some of what the cover tells us is indicative of what the book's about, undoubtedly. But it doesn't tell the whole story. And when I listened to them tell me their stories, the person I saw was totally different than the one I had seen. And it made me realize, I wonder if I see anything in the world the way it actually is, or if I see everything the way I am. At that moment in the book, I looked over to my right and I saw a monk unzipping the sky, inviting me to come into a parallel reality that I had never seen before. And I did, and I met the wise one, who was the keeper of the mosaic. He was arranging all the mosaic pieces of the world. That's the preamble to the book. That's what my sponsor needs for me to do. If you like what I just spoke, I hope you'll go out and buy it. You'll make my sponsor very happy. I'll be happy too, but you'll make my sponsor very happy. And if you don't, then you'll also make me happy. I just love that you would know a little bit about it, and that's good. Now with that tucked into its neatly made bed, we can have this conversation, which I've been longing for. I have in front of me Kathleen Hamilton. Kathleen, welcome to the conversation. How are you? Who are you? And what's important to you? Can you tell us any of those answers right now?
Absolutely. I will do my best to keep my train of thought. It is such a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for having me, Daniel. It was, a pleasure speaking to you last week. And I too have been really looking forward to this conversation. Knowing who you are and what you do makes it all the more sweet. So thank you for having me. I am Kathleen, as you mentioned. I, up until about 2 weeks ago, was a digital nomad traveler type, and I was living all over the world, traveling and actually working while I was doing it. I work as the head of product for GeniusU, which is an entrepreneur education platform. And I get to work with an amazing international team of people to make tech products happen, which is really exciting and totally not something I ever thought I would be doing or that I even imagined was possible in the world. So that's really cool. And yeah, I've settled in Lisbon since being a digital nomad, and now I'm still working, but have a home base, which feels really good. And I really, really deeply care about the future, but I also really deeply care about the present. And in that present, I care about people. And for me, one of the most important things is that people are able and free to live a life that ultimately brings them fulfillment and enjoyment, and that they get to do things and make things and be part of things that they're passionate about. And my hope as part of all of that is that they also can live a fulfilled life, meaning that they have what they need and are healthy and able to get what they want out of life. So that's a lot to hope for. But I have this deep-seated belief that the more people believe in themselves and are given the tools to create that life, the better a world we'll have, because we'll all have the ability to make more impact if we can actually do what we love to do, because that's what we're here to do, is to do what we love. So that's kind of my core principle system in a nutshell.
Can you see why I love having these conversations? I mean, what a beautiful person to be sitting across from. And to hear that, and just to have people like that walk into this room and just want to share their time and their energy and their beautifulness with me. Thank you so much for what you do and for sharing that with us. What a beautiful gift. What's important to you?
What's really important to me? My family is like at the core of everything I do. They're really, really important to me, particularly my siblings are really, really important to me. That people care about each other is really important to me, which is one of the things that struck me most about you the first time we spoke, is it's very evident how much you care about other people, which
That's
really
so kind
matters
of
to
you.
me.
That's
Yeah.
so kind of you to say. Thank you.
Yeah.
What a
Thank
beautiful
you.
thing to say.
Yeah. And as an extension of all of that, as an extension of people caring about each other, people caring about the world, I think the world and the earth and, you know, the health of it really matters to me, which is particularly pertinent now as we see the effects of so much destruction human beings have had. So I think more conscientiousness generally as humanity is a really good thing, and is definitely something I care about.
So for someone who cares so deeply about that, when you look into the world and you see, what do you see when you see? Because it doesn't seem, it can often seem at times that people don't care about one another, that people care more about boxing each other into neat boxes where they can oppose one another or fight one another or disagree with one another. When you care about people taking care of the world and you see fires blazing all throughout the west coast of America and floods hitting the east coast of America and global warming coming, whether we want to admit it or not. How do you deal with that for someone who so deeply cares about people caring about other people in the world that we live in?
Yeah, I mean, I think caring, just caring and loving in general, is one of both the most liberating and the most painful things you can possibly do.
Wow.
And also it's so core to who we are as human beings. And when you shut yourself off from that, you cause yourself more irrevocable pain than you can possibly imagine. And in terms of like how to cope with everything that's happening right now, I can only speak from my own point of view, but I think what I see when I look at it all is I tend to zoom out and zoom in again. Because when you zoom out, you see all of these awful things happening and people not treating each other well and political divisions and nationalism that harms others and this huge, like, you know, what seems totally insurmountable thing that is, you know, the climate crisis. And you think, how can people be so horrible, right? And then you zoom in again and you see these human beings who are just doing their best and totally fumbling through it. And I think of like my parents sometimes, and I remember being younger and totally resenting them because I was like, how could they do this to me? How could they have brought me into this world and, you know, have done this to me, whether this is grounding me or, you know, teaching me a lesson I didn't want to learn or sending me off to a family vacation I didn't want to be on. And then I like got older and I looked at them and I was like, wow, they really had no idea what they were doing. Yeah. And they totally did their best. They did exactly what they thought was the right thing at the right moment. And there was no way for them to have known any differently.
Yeah.
And I think we can look at like politicians and people in power now, and we can look at, you know, folks who might be maybe our elderly grandparents or our next door neighbor who maybe might be a little bit racist or nationalistic. And we can say, how can they be that way? But they're doing the best they know how. And maybe they haven't learned what you've learned and they don't know what you know, but that doesn't make any of us better than one another. We're all just trying to figure it out and doing our best.
I love that. I also love this is why I love conversation. And for those of you who are listening, listen to what I'm about to say, because it comes from what Kathleen just said. When she spoke about her ability to zoom in and zoom out, my perspective was almost exactly the opposite of her zoom in and zoom out. My perspective was when we zoom in, we sometimes see some ugliness that is just there, that of the way people are treating each other and how they are. Mm-hmm. But when we zoom out and we get perspective and we come up, we just see a world that's beautiful and we can't see all the individual ugliness. But I love the way her zoom in showed me something that I didn't see when I zoom in. And I love the way her zoom out showed me something that I didn't see also. And so just those changes of perspective give us so much. And so, and it's so rich. What makes you happy?
It's funny because I start in the same place. My family makes me so happy. Yeah. And people make me so happy. Like I love all the people that I get to interact with in my life. I also really, really love cooking. This is a recent thing that has started to make me really happy. So feeding people makes me so happy. I love.
Why are you in Lisbon? I wish you were closer.
I'll send you some cinnamon buns. I made some this weekend. They were brilliant. And like anything green. Maybe that's a bit too vague because a caterpillar probably doesn't make me as happy as like, you know, a big bushy plant. But if they come together, I'm thrilled enough. So I just like the ability to, or the gift that it is to be part of everything that exists. And that sounds so like vague and kind of like woo. And I can feel myself putting judgments on saying it that way. But I feel like it's such a gift to just get to do stuff and like make stuff and be alive. And I had a friend in college who said this thing to me that totally stuck with me and has to this day. And she said, I'm just so excited and happy to get to be here and to get to make things with my hands. And I was like, that's a really good point. Yeah. Like, that's pretty cool. So yeah, I think I'm described as a very happy person generally. And I smile a lot and I laugh at pretty much everything. I used to get asked like, why do you laugh so much? And honestly, everything's kind of funny, which it just means that I'm content quite a lot. So yeah, a lot of things make me really happy, but those are kind of the immediate things that are making me happy in my present life.
I love that. I want to catch something that I heard you say, and I think you said it sort of like, you know, just passing through it. But it caught my ears. That this sounds wrong for me to say, or something like that. You said something, and I almost have a hard time saying that. I just like creating things or being in nature. It sounds so Pollyannish or whatever, or woo-woo or whatever it was.
Yeah, I think I said woo-woo.
So what do you think it is about us that makes what we believe not okay to say?
Yeah, I can definitely speak to that. I think there is so much, it's kind of a natural thing that human beings do, because this idea of judgment doesn't exist in a vacuum, right? Like the the idea that we tend to define ourselves by what we are not. And this is like both my personal opinion and a concept in sociology, which speaks about like how we frame our identity. And so much about like identity politics, if you want to call it, which started in sociology long before it came to the modern age of like gender and race and all this kind of stuff. But identity politics at its core and like creating your identity comes from how you negotiate, how you exist in conversation with other people. So for example, in that instance, I said, that sounds very woo-woo. And by drawing attention to it, almost part of me was meaning to say, but I'm not that way. So I'm identifying the way that I thought that to tell you that I'm not like that. And the reason that I think I did that in that instance is because I think the spiritual community has a really bad rap. And for me personally, like I grew up in Bali, and Bali has become very much the current era's spiritual hotspot. It's like the destination people go to find themselves. Thanks a lot, Eat, Pray, Love, for that one. But, you know, and we in school made fun of those people. We were like, oh, those spiritual types, those like hippies that are coming to like colonize our island. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm obviously not Balinese. I felt some level of ownership to being there because I had grown up there, but by no means am I local. And I know that now, but at the time probably couldn't have made that differentiation. And so for me, like in that conscious space, I was like, I don't want to be identified with them. Growing up now, like I meditated in school. We did like holistic education. I went to college and was immediately identified as the hippie type because I wore meditation mala and I was wearing my long flowy clothes and I had grown up in the jungle. So everyone was like, oh, that hippie. And at that point I embraced it. And so I've gone through these various phases of like embracing, like contracting and expanding against this piece of my identity, which I actually believe is deeply important for everyone to have some level of spirituality. Totally. So in a different context of conversation, I probably wouldn't have called that thought out. But I feel like sometimes in any conversation with anyone, we tend to have, and I tend to have this kind of like resistance to, okay, how am I framing myself in this moment? How are people going to think about me? And like, what's important for me to portray or not portray? And this subconscious mind kicks in and is like, oh, better call out that thing you said. Otherwise people might think you're a hippie. And then they won't think you're credible or they should listen to you, you know? So that's in a long-winded explanation what I think happened there.
First of all, thank you for so beautifully stating it as well, because I think it's just, you can feel the intelligence of your conversation, which I really love.
Thank you.
Maybe it's just in getting older, but it so intrigues me to hear you say what you say, because clearly you're an intelligent, person. Clearly you have some sense of yourself and you know who you are and what you're doing. And I don't know when it happened for me that I stopped worrying about what other people think. And I can't say I do it entirely, because if someone writes something bad about me, it does affect me a little bit, but so much less than it used to. Because I just wonder, but it isn't because I'm worried about what you will think of me. I'm worried about what I could have done that could have possibly made that person think that way. But I wonder why other people's opinions are so important to us that they stop us from being ourselves. Any thoughts?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I feel like we're taught, and maybe this isn't everyone, because I've met so many people in my life who are just like, yeah, why do you care about that? Like, I don't care what people think. And every time I see them, I'm like, damn, I wish I could be more like them, And I'm not sure. And, part of me wants to point to like, oh, well, gender and like women have to be more. And I think there are elements of that for sure. Like, I think there are intersectional identities that we all carry where we have to present in certain ways for society to deem us appropriate. But look at me, like I'm like a straight cis white woman from an upper middle class family who's like had it easy. I believe I've had it easy in the grand scheme of the world. But for some reason, I'm still absolutely like totally conscious at all times of what people might think of me. but I still put myself in really public spaces because I like am confident in who I am, but I'm also really self-conscious, which is an interesting thing to be both at the same time. And I think that there are a lot of us that are taught to care about what other people think. I mean, all the way from like being kids where like, you know, our parents like, oh, make sure you're polite, make sure you don't like chew with your mouth open because then people will think you're gross. Like, you know, be nice to others. Sometimes they say just be nice to others, or be nice to others because, you know, so-and-so is watching. And for me, I grew up with not both my parents by any means. One of my parents is very much like liberal and free-spirited and not really bothered at all and does what they want. But one parent that was very like conscious of other parents and how they thought, and conscious of other people, and was like, you have to present yourself this way. Don't ever get tattoos or piercings because then you'll look like a homeless person. Like very strong opinions, things that I do like resisted and don't believe in. And I'm like fully tattooed and also still working, you know, in tech and hoping to be a CEO one day. But for sure, like my tattoos were not just, they were partially like, I just want these, but a lot of them were like, I am actively resisting what I've been told is possible. And I'm doing this because I know other people are watching, right? So it's like, but it's interesting when we're taught that other people care that much about what we do, we also act out, which is just an observation on like my own process.
Yeah.
But I don't think that everyone cares, but I think a lot of people care what other people think. And I'm hoping that there's just some like magic age in which like I'm just suddenly not going to care anymore. And I always imagine it's quite like late in my life, like further on the other side of 50, because at that point I can see myself just being so done with everyone that I don't care anymore. Yeah. Or so in love with everyone that I don't care anymore, right? It could go either way. But right now in my like mid 20s, other people's opinions still seem so important for me to get where I'm going. Yeah. And when I step back, I don't believe that to be true. Like I hear myself saying it and I don't believe it to be true. But when I'm in it, it's like the weight of it is there. It's like, I have to be aware of it, you know?
When I think back on my life, my 20s were a time where I wanted to make something of myself, when I wanted to, you know, show the world show myself and the world that I could do something. So clearly that would be a moment when the world's recognition of me or thoughts of me would influence me. I think by the time I turned 40, I was like, you know what? It doesn't really matter.
That's the magic age I'll look forward to.
Maybe. I realize that people are so preoccupied thinking about themselves that they really aren't spending too much time thinking about me anyway.
Yeah, it's like that whole thing that like, you know, don't care what you look like when you're dancing because everyone else is too worried about what they look like when they're dancing. So if you just go out and enjoy yourself, which actually is probably one of the few places in my life I don't care what other people think of me is when I'm dancing.
I love that. If money weren't important, what would you do?
If money weren't important, I would... Wow. I immediately like went to like, oh, well, I'd go out and like, you know, be supporting like new education movements and things. But when I hear if money weren't important, part of me is like, well, what if money weren't important to everyone? Yeah. What would that look like, you know? Because if that were the case, like I'd build a utopian commune out in an amazing, beautiful place, probably in like Southern Europe somewhere, and hold really big dance parties and breed goats. But if that's like if money weren't an object for everyone, if money weren't an object for me specifically, but the world was still the same way it is now, I would probably want to go and educate as many people as possible, but with a large collective of other people who are experts in their field, whatever that may be, and specifically take that education to places that really need it and want to change or grow or are developing. I'd want to like start government programs where we could like make sure that everyone had housing. I would want to go out and like fund a bunch of startups in developing countries so that they could all like actually be boosting their own economy and not dependent on like, you know, fully developed countries to fund them when they may not have the best intentions. Yeah, I would want to do a lot of stuff, but it would all have to do with travel and kind of like actively supporting people who really need it to be able to build the life that they want.
So now that money is important still, how far are you away from doing what you would do if money wasn't important?
For the goat herding like commune, pretty far away. For the like social startups and, you know, education, actually not as far, which feels really good. I've definitely probably a couple years out, but I feel like I'm on the right path to get there, which is
it felt that way to me, which is what I wanted. I wanted to make sure you saw what it seemed obvious to me, that you're right in path to do all that.
It's funny because like if you had asked me a year ago, my answer might have been different, but I do feel like I wasn't really sure what I wanted. And it feels like every day now it's getting so much clearer. And at the same time, as it gets clearer, it feels more attainable. And I think it's partially because it's bigger than me now. Like it's so much bigger than me, and it has to do with really making the world a better place in a way that just like absolutely lights me up. So anything I'm doing, if it's not aligned to that, I can feel it like in my gut really quickly. So that's, if you'd asked me a while ago, I probably wouldn't have had the same answer. So it's exciting to be able to say that out loud.
Yeah, totally. How great. We're going to move to another segment of what we do. It's a lightning round, but you have to know I suck at lightning rounds because I'm curious. So I don't know why I do it, but I just do it because I think it's a great way to play.
Awesome.
Are you a dog person or a cat person?
Cat person.
Coffee or tea?
Coffee.
Conservative or liberal?
Oh. I think I'm liberal. I don't know. In whose world, I guess, is kind of the question. I think liberal by what I understand to be the popular culture norms.
How about
of
in
the
your
word.
own world? Do you feel you're a conservative person or a liberal person?
Liberal, yeah.
Okay. Are you shy or outgoing?
Outgoing.
I you look at me like, isn't that obvious? But for a lot of years, still now, people don't believe me because look, I'm having conversations with people I don't know, and I'm show up here. I consider myself a very shy person. And still somehow, my persona that I put out is outgoing, but I love the quiet of being, just quiet. Do you feel like you've always fit into the world, or do you feel like you're a little bit different?
I feel like I'm a little bit different.
What was the hesitation?
I have there's kind of this part of me that resists this. There was for a while, and I think maybe it's still prevalent in like the mainstream, but this whole thing like, oh, I don't fit in anywhere. No one understands me. And I think about my middle school self and like, yeah, I fully was like, no one understands me. No one's ever going to understand me. Right. And I think about like popular culture and whatever, and it's like, yeah, I've never really been into pop culture, but there's been plenty of people that haven't been into pop culture. Like if you put me in, a room with a bunch of people who want to change the world, I probably fit in pretty well. But if you put me in a room full of people who are happy in their hometown and don't really want to get anything out of life besides growing a garden, I'd probably stick out like a sore thumb, although I am getting into gardening. But so there's it's contextual, but I also have a resistance to like, oh, I don't fit in anywhere, or so because I do believe that there is a community for everyone, or no matter who they are and what they do. And the amazing thing is the internet exists, so you have everything at your fingertips all the time. And if you sit in a room believing you don't fit in, then you're never going to fit in anywhere.
Do you believe most people fit into the world?
I don't necessarily know if there's like an in to fit into, like I think that everyone exists and we're all existing together right now at the same time, and all in varying wavelengths of what we've experienced. So like fitting in or not fitting in is just an illusion of our own separation.
Love it. One of the big data points that I've gathered through the asking these questions, because all the questions are meant to get data to sort of to present in sort of a movie or something like that, that I hope to do down the line, is that I thought people felt like they fit into the world, because everybody I met was trying so hard to fit into the world that they didn't fit into.
Mm.
And the data that I got from this show, and it just may be the population of people that are drawn to speak to me, 95% of the people say that they don't feel like they fit in. And so what do you think it is about a world of people who don't fit in, that try so desperately hard to fit into the world, and even try harder to make other people fit into the world?
That's so interesting, and such like an interesting point to have found. And I think what you've just said, like, people that don't fit into the world, that try so hard to make other people fit into the world.
Yeah.
It's like there's this thing that's been sold to us that none of us really believe in, but we all want everyone else to believe in it, because if they don't believe in it, then we've been trapped into something we didn't agree to. It's kind of like that, where we're like, wow, we've been tricked. But if we all just came together and realized we'd been tricked, maybe we could do something about it and like change the object of the game. I think that, look, I mean, the reality we exist in has been built on centuries and centuries and centuries of a history of humanity that is outdated to us. But we all just, like, every version has just been an iteration on the last. And every version of it had people that didn't think they fit in. Like, if you look at like the Renaissance, the artists, the painters, like they were all sitting there going, this is rubbish. We don't agree with anything that's happened. So let's create something new. And so they went and created something new. And then we got the next age of art. And in every single age, it's just been this back and forth. We don't agree with them anymore. We're going to move on. Like the microcosm of a family is the easiest way to see this. It's like the kids never agree with the parents. They're like, nope, that's outdated. That's old. You look at Gen Z nowadays and they hate the boomers, and you look at the boomers and they disagree with the people, so everyone, like, we're built as human beings to want to iterate. We want to build new things. We want to try something new. So no one feels they fit in because everyone's trying to create the next thing, whatever that is, whether that's for them or their ideology or a physical object. So I think maybe not fitting in is part of what it is to be human. But trying to make others fit in, that's where the question comes in for me. Like, why would we do that? What do you think?
Well, it's so interesting to me, because when Apple first came out, I watched their campaign grow. And when I first heard their sort of creed, which these are for all the people that are different, all the people that are crazy enough to believe that they can change the world, and will, these are for those people who are not like everybody else. I thought, what a sort of small way to paint the world. Because why would they go after that market? Because that market's obviously not big. The bigger market is all the people that do fit in. But he was brilliant. He created, because what he really tapped into is the fact that nobody feels that they fit into the world really in the way that they fit in. I mean, there's people that will do fit in, and they'll go with Big Blue, but IBM, but there are a whole bunch of people that are misfits. And I think I liked most what someone said when I asked her the question, and she said, well, I completely fit in, and then my eyebrow run up, because nothing she had said to me prior to that made me think that she would answer that way. And I said, you got to help me understand that, because that's like the picture you painted of yourself doesn't fit that. And I'm not that I disagree with you. I just want to know what you think. She said, well, of course I fit in, because it's a world where nobody fits in. So I fit in perfectly. It's because everybody in the world doesn't fit in. And it was almost like what Steve Jobs had done before, but what she said was so beautiful. And I think we create a world of misfits who become a new world of people. And we fit into the world of misfits. And maybe that's why we try to, because I think we all want to have a tribe. Yeah. I remember the first time I found my like-minded community. I thought I died and went to heaven. I couldn't believe other people were as crazy as I was and believed what I was. and I didn't have to defend myself and my belief systems to them. But like Ecclesiastic said, to everything there is a season and a time for every season under heaven. And I wonder if that time of like-mindedness hasn't come and gone. Because what I see now is the silos of like-minded communities are bigger and stronger, but the gaps between them are wider and deeper. And suddenly we have silos everywhere of people who believe what they believe, but don't let other people in who don't believe what they believe. And the world is becoming siloed rather than in a world that was created, there were no silos. There was just open fields. And I wonder if it's not time for us to innovate again by bringing like and unlike minds together and seeing how we can see the world differently. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I think there's a question of safety in that. Like, I think when I think about like, because I agree with you, I feel like the rifts between communities have become wider and deeper. Even as certain communities seek to bridge that divide, it just seems like this massive valley that we can't cross. And I think part of that is safety. Like, I think we've made it unsafe for people to be who they are. And we've made it unsafe for people to believe differently to us. Like in the internet, we live in an age of cancel culture where we cancel someone because they've done something that we disagree with. And don't get me wrong, there are some reasons that seem very valid. Things like, sexual abuse or, outright racism or hurting other people. In my mind, that's a reason to potentially like hand over someone's platform to another person more worthy. But I also think that like, in this cancel culture, in this like era of total political divide and a world that is absolutely screaming at us to pay attention, people are so scared of others right now. And people are scared to feel like no one feels safe. Everyone's always on the defense now about their belief systems and what's happening, because the world in many ways, different like micro actions have shown that it's not safe for certain people. And I would say there are maybe a few governments and institutions that go against that and do make it, they really are making a point to try and make it safe for people again to be who they are. But I would say more and more, because the divide has been created, there's more people that they want to jump into communities that feel safe. They don't want to put themselves in situations where they or their loved ones may be harmed. And this is both on a psychological and physical level.
Yeah.
And it kind of feels like a bit like a chicken and the egg, right? Because it's like, how do you get back from not feeling safe into feeling safe without crossing the divide yourself? And I guess there's a question of like, how much is that individual responsibility versus like collective action towards creating a safe space for the people that might feel unsafe?
Listeners, I want you to replay that and just listen to it, because there's so much in that for you to unpack. And there's so much in that for you to question what you actually think and feel and believe and all of that. What a rich series of statements. I want to ask you about something, because in the safety of the group think and the safety of the like-minded community, what I've noticed is that in those silos of like-mindedness, we've lost the ability to stand up for what we disagree with. And we just go along with what the group thinks, because we're so scared to not be a part of the group. And so what was once the safety of that group now becomes unsafe again. And I wonder where real safety lies in the description you gave.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Yeah. It's like when you're in a group and you suddenly feel safe, and then you're at risk of losing that place because you disagree with something. So you stay quiet, and then you're both trapped and feeling unsafe because you can't express yourself anymore.
Yeah. And it's almost even worse. It's almost even worse because you thought these people were the ones that had your back.
Right.
But you've watched when people have stood up and spoken out that they've been ostracized or something's happened, and you don't want to do that. So now you don't feel safe in what was once your safe space.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think part of that is like a good natural evolution. Like, I think if any of us stayed in a group for too long, we'd be at risk of never challenging our own ideas. So it's probably a good thing, first of all, to like move out of those cycles. But I think the real safety. And it's always difficult to talk about this because I think that there's a line that has to be drawn between like someone who has the privilege of not being at physical risk and someone who is at physical risk, whether that is for their race or class or gender or background. And in the case of someone that is at physical risk, I can't speak to their experience, and I'm not going to try and say that there's a universal solution. But to someone who is, you know, not at risk of physical violence and who is feeling like they don't belong anywhere and that they now disagree with the in-group they've found themselves in, I think that the real safety in being who we are has to be decided by us as something that we want individually, you know, like, because without being conscious of it, I may never have known, right, that it even was affecting me that way. So as soon as we become conscious of it, we have the ability to take action towards ensuring our own safety and creating an environment when we're safe. And then it also comes from kind of creating that within ourselves by showing up for others, where if I can show up and have this conversation with you and feel seen and heard and validated, and in that same way create that space for you, then we immediately have a safe space between the two of us, you know.
Absolutely.
Which is the first thing. And then it's like I can just go out and do that with another person tomorrow and another person the next day, and suddenly I'm building my own net and my own places where I feel safe and seen and heard. But I've also decided who I am and what I stand for, so that I can feel comfortable going out and doing that in any circumstance.
Do you feel people know who they are?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think maybe the illusion that we have is that what we are is a fixed thing. I think one of the most liberating moments in my life was when I realized that nobody had a clue what was going on. And I was equally as clueless. But stepping into that, I was like, wow, this is brilliant. Like, what a place to play, you know, because none of us know and everyone's just figuring it out. So therefore, so I think that, you know, everyone knows at their core, really, you know, like if you listen to that voice that's inside your head, that's you talking and trying to be heard. So like, give it a listen, you know, and nudge it if it's going the wrong direction. But I think we know.
So I love what you're saying, because one of the things that's really become powerfully important to me in these years of my life is to create a revolution of listening. And the revolution of listening starts with the ability to listen to ourselves, which then gives us the ability to listen to other people. Because when we know who we are and we listen to ourselves and we feel strong in who we are, then we're not challenged by what people believe or think. I mean, we're always curious about what people think and believe. And when they say something that makes us want to believe something different, we can easily change because we're not threatened at the core of who we are to believe one way or another.
Yeah.
What's the most important thing you've learned through listening?
The word that pops into my mind is curiosity. I think the power and the value of curiosity all through life. Because if you just keep asking questions, you're going to keep being given answers. And the better your questions are, the better your answers will be. And I think that that applies, you know, in a journey of self-discovery equally as much as it applies in a journey of, you know, helping others or changing the world, however big or small. I think if we all approach things with more curiosity, which comes with listening, right? It's like, I've only learned how to be more curious by listening to others, and being then inclined to be curious about them always leads to the most wonderful places.
I love that. I feel like we live in a world where people are givers or takers. I don't feel like we live in a world where many people know how to receive. And when I look into the word listening, it also has the ability of receiving. And so it makes sense to me from the way that I see the world, and just it's only my, you know, an old man's ruminations about how the world looks to him. But if people don't know how to receive very well, it would make a lot of sense to me that they don't know how to listen very well.
Mm.
Why do you think people who give so much have such a hard time receiving? Or do you think that?
Yeah, I would agree with that as a statement. I think that there definitely, for a lot of people who, and like I can take myself as an example, I always considered myself a giver. And in my own experience, like what I would say through a lot of my life has prevented me from receiving or made me not open to receiving is that I had built my identity around being a giver. And for some reason, that didn't include receiving, because if I was, this whole thought loop was like, if I'm receiving or I'm open to receiving, then I am a burden unto someone else. But then I thought about it and I'm like, but I don't think anyone's a burden to me when I'm giving to them. So
Right.
why would I be a burden to someone else? But this was the narrative, because to receive is to be selfish, or to receive is to take from someone else, when if it's being freely given, you're not taking anything at all, right? You're receiving. It's in the word itself. So yeah, I think for me, it was like, it was opposite to what I believed my identity to be.
Yeah.
And it was only when someone said to me, what if your sister believed that way? Like, is she a burden to you? And I
Yeah.
was like, no, how dare you say that?
Right.
And then I was like, oh. So actually, one of the mentalities that I have been practicing in my own life to open myself up more, or be more trusting, be more receiving, is like, what would I tell my sister to do?
Oh,
Which I think a lot of people conceptualize as like, what would I tell my younger self to do? Or what would I
yeah.
tell my child to do? And for me, it's like, what would I tell my sister or my little brother to do? And that's then how I crack myself open a bit more every day to be more open to receiving.
So, listener, who do you talk to that allows you to hear yourself? What comments do you say to someone who you can model those comments after, what you can do, what you can then say for yourself? How do people get, you're going to send me all of your social media links
Yes.
and you're going to, all that. But if people want to get in touch with you, what would be the best way out of all those things that you're going to send me to get access to you?
Yeah, for sure. The most immediate access, like, and definitely send me a message. I'm always happy to chat and connect, probably between like Instagram and LinkedIn. I'll also give you my email though. And if people prefer email, feel free to write me a letter, or email me and ask for my address. And I might like let you send me a real letter by carrier pigeon.
I love it. I love it. You've said so much and shared so much. What a rich conversation. I want to thank you for just being here with us. It's amazing how quickly time goes.
Yeah, seriously.
But I want to give you 2 minutes to just, the world is yours right now. The world is listening. What is it you want to say to the world right now?
Don't forget to have fun. I think that's my key. The key thing that I'm mulling over a lot these days is, there is so much going on and it can often feel so overwhelming. And if you are someone that is seeking, you'll often find yourself in a seeking place, whether you're seeking your own identity or seeking understanding of others. But we have been placed in this moment in time, and we have such an opportunity to get to exist and play and be here with other people. So as much as you can, remember to have fun. That would be my key last thought.
Beautiful. We take life so seriously sometimes, and we forget that it can just be fun too, right?
Yeah.
Again, I want to thank you so much for coming. I want to thank those of you who have listened to the show. Thank you for being here and listening to us. You've given us the most valuable thing you could give us, which is your time. And I want to thank you for that opportunity to spend this time with you and for you to be here and listen to us. I also want to challenge you. Before I was on Kathleen's podcast a week or so ago, I had no idea she even existed. Before she came in the room, I didn't really know what she believed. But how long does it take to get to know somebody, and how long does it take to become a friend? She's now a friend of mine. And I know that if I travel around the world and I go to wherever she's staying, I can go and I can sit with her and we can have dinner together, or we can stay over, or we can do something, right? Because that's just the way it is now we're friends. When we live in a strange world, it's because people in the world are strangers. When we live in a friendly world, it's because we've made those people our friends. I want to challenge each of you to go out and speak to someone you don't know. I want to challenge every single one of you to go up to someone either online or in person and just sit with them and ask them, how are you doing? Not with the thought to change them or help them or fix them or convert them or make them do something you want them to do, but just with the simple joy of just giving them your heart and holding the space for them to be themselves with you. And I want you to tell me what happens when you do that. Because I think what I'm seeing happen in the hundreds of conversations I'm having now, is that strangers are becoming friends. And this world could use a lot of friends. Make friends with the world. Between now and then, let's make friends with the world. Let's give the world an opportunity to come back as friends. Between now and the next stranger, be kind to each other, love each other, treat each other with respect. And as Kathleen said, have fun doing it, right? Don't forget to have fun. I want to thank you all for being here. Kathleen, again. Les, is there anything else you want to say before we go out?
Just thank you so much for having me, and thank you for having all of these conversations and, making the time to really connect with others as well. I think the power and energy I can feel of every conversation you've had up to this point, and all of them that you will have after me, is really incredible. And yeah, I just want to thank you as well for having me on. It was an honor.
It is my honor. And I hope this is the beginning of our relationship, not the end.
Yes, so definitely.
Please don't be a stranger, okay?
Absolutely.
All right. Until the next stranger comes, thank you again. God bless you. Be kind, be happy, have fun, and treat people as friends. Take care. Thank you. Ciao.